Hey everybody, this is Townsend. I'm a singer, songwriter, musician, and mental health advocate, and I started the You're Not Alone project and podcast to help educate, spread awareness, and simply help you feel a little less alone, no matter what you're going through. Thank you so much for tuning in to Season 2 of You're Not Alone with Townsend. Be sure to click the follow button and share these stories. You can also watch the interviews on our YouTube under Townsend T Music. You can also keep up with the journey if you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Townsend T Music. Every like, follow, and share helps us continue to change lives. What is up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of You're Not Alone with Townsend. I, of course, am your host, Townsend. We've got a special guest today, one that I'm pretty excited I got on the podcast. Not going to lie, I'm going to go ahead and name drop from here on out that I had Kelly Krout on my podcast. No big deal. She probably looks familiar or sounds familiar because if you were into politics at all, or you don't live under a rock, she is a former candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Arkansas. She's a published writer, I do believe I've seen before, and just an amazing public speaker. And I've had the honor of meeting her and hearing her speak. And I actually told her right before we hopped on, when I heard her speak, I was like, she has to be on the podcast. So Kelly, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure.
Yeah. So we're going to be chit-chatting something that you were really passionate about. And honestly, I had thought about this topic, but hearing you talk about it made me more curious and wanted me to dive more into the topic of fostering.
Yeah. No, it's been a huge part of our life. So I'm excited to get a chance to share some more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody listening, this is Kelly Krout. We're going to be chit-chatting about fostering. This is something, again, even if you're not into fostering, or maybe you've got an inkling that you want to learn a little bit more, this is going to be an awesome episode. So stay tuned, listen. I always let my guests introduce themselves. So Kelly, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you are, why, you're just as cool as you are. Just tell us, how you do it. Yeah. I mean, how do you do it all?
Oh, you're very kind. So yeah, I'm Kelly Krout. I am a social worker up in Northwest Arkansas. I live in Lowell, which is a little bit south of Rogers, and I serve as a mental health professional at a local high school. So I'm do school-based therapy with teenagers, so 9th through 12th grade. And then that's about 3/4 of my job. And the other quarter of my job is like community outreach, where I get to go teach all kinds of different groups of people about mental health issues. Usually that's teachers. So like suicide awareness or, mental wellness. I do a bunch of stuff along those lines, anti-bullying, stuff like that. So it's a super fun job. I did spend the last couple of years pretty immersed in local and statewide politics. So I ran for state rep in 2020 and I ran for lieutenant governor in 2022 and spent a lot of time just advocating for better systems that allow people to be able to do well here in our state, which is a lot tied into the foster care stuff, right? My husband and I fostered for 10 years on and off, starting back in 2011, and just fell in love with being able to serve that community and just having our eyes open to what a huge need it was. At some point, you can only take in so many children. We have a handful of biological children. We fostered around 20, and then 3 we ended up adopting, which left us with 7 children total, which is quite a large number.
That is a classroom.
And fun fact, they're all boys, so that keeps it extra exciting. I don't know if you knew that.
Man, I bet your house smells terrific.
Listen, we got those boys cleaning up after themselves. But anyway, so I was just like, we can't keep taking in kids forever. You run out of space eventually. And I wanted to continue to kind of be able to connect with that population and serve in more of a social work role, which is what drove me into getting my social work degree. So I'm actually a pretty newer social worker because I did this part of my life first and then went to school after. I actually graduated with my master's during the lieutenant governor race.
What in the world?
How?
Wow. Wow.
Townsend, I'm going to be honest with you. I look back and I'm like, how did we actually do that? I'm not sure, but we.
And you're still alive to tell the tales, the crazy part.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, so here's the agreement that you've taken since you hopped on. And this is I'm just going to make an agreement because you're live and so you can't say no. You're going to come back on and I want to talk about the high school kids and all of that. That's amazing. I'm so interested in all that.
Okay,
cool. You're going to come back.
Okay, no problem.
My listeners they all heard that. So this is a verbal agreement.
No problem.
Okay. That is amazing. I had no idea that you had gone back to school to do all of that. That just makes you even cooler. Can't believe that. That's amazing. So I met Kelly. I said this a little bit earlier, but I met you at an event actually for your politics, like the running of it. And I was playing guitar and singing. And something that caught my eye was Kelly got up and she spoke in front of all these people. And not only am I blown away by someone that's very good at public speaking, I respect that so much. It's hard not to get up there and stammer and say, and they kind of caught you off guard getting you up there and saying it. So I was just enamored by seeing you get up there and gracefully speak in front of all these people. You were very relatable. You're very vulnerable about your fostering story. And like I said, it really caught my attention. It's something that I've not really dove into myself, but I love to hear more about it. So let's start with, why is fostering so important to you? Or more so, why did you get interested in that system?
Yeah, no, fair enough. And thank you for that. That's very, very kind words. And I do want the record to show that I get nervous literally every single time.
Isn't that crazy? So do I. And people think because I play music that you're like, yeah, they think you're lying. But I'm like, no, I kind of sort of black out before I get on stage.
I get nervous every single time. I'm nervous for this. I always get nervous. I'm like, oh,
no.
Any minute I'm going to say something so ridiculous.
Yeah. It just you just keep rolling.
There you go. But yeah, my husband and I, we got married young. We were like 20 and 21 or something. Like, we were literal babies. But when we were dating, we worked in a church nursery together for a while. And there was a foster family who brought their kids in and we cared for them. And it just sort of sparked a conversation. And we were just like, this is such a neat thing to get to do. Let's do this one day. Is this something you want to do? And we both kind of agreed. Well, then when we got married, we wanted to foster right away. And at the time, there was a rule that you had to be married for 2 years first before you could foster. Mm-hmm. That rule no longer exists, but it was at the time. And so we were like, oh, well, shucks, it's off the table for now. Got kind of distracted and had a few biological kids, and then kind of came across the need a few years later. And somebody was speaking. It was at a church event, actually, and they were just talking about the need for foster parents in our area. And we were like, oh, man, remember we were totally going to do that.
Yeah. And, right. That calling. That's right.
Yeah. Like, wait, we still want to. That's still something we can do. And we had 3 little boys at the time who were 5, 3, and 1. And so we were like, you know what? We've got the space to do this, which sounds chaotic now that I even say it, but like at the time that made sense to us, right? Yeah. But we didn't want to take in little kids because we had a lot of little kids, and little kids are very physically demanding. And I was like, hey, let's spread ourselves completely thin and take in a teenager that's a little bit more like mentally demanding, right? And so we're just going to give them from all sides.
Let's just do it all. Yeah.
It seemed like a great idea. And so we took in a teen girl, was our first placement. And we loved fostering teen. I think that's where kind of my love of teens was like, oh, teens are really cool. They're like almost adults, and they're just like, so malleable. I just freaking love teenagers. And so we started fostering then, and then, the rest is kind of history. Once you're in it, once you know that need, once you meet the kids and you are involved, it's hard to say no. And that was kind of a lesson that we learned along the way. We fostered, like I said, about 20 kids over about a 10-year period. So we would close and take a little breather, and then we'd open back up, or we'd have another baby, or whatever. But yeah, once you were involved, it was really hard to not be involved.
Yeah. So you've got 21 children now, you said, right?
Something like that.
I'm kidding. You've got a baseball team. No, I'm totally messing. Yeah. So my sister actually, since you and I had this conversation, kind of got involved in fostering. So we've tipped the iceberg a little bit, and it's really interesting to see how that happens. I don't think people realize they can show up at your door at 2 a.m. and be like, hey, so we got this kid and they like need a home now. But like you said, you can't say no. I mean, they show up with like a trash bag of clothes,
that's a real thing.
if anything. And so you're just like, oh my gosh, if I say no, where do they go? I mean, it's just something that needs attention. So I'm so glad you're here to talk about it.
Say, like, you do have to say no. Like, sometimes you do. Like,
oh no, yeah.
But it's really difficult. And there certainly were times that we probably should have said no when we did anyway, and maybe over, extended ourselves a bit, but, kind of learned through that process and kind of figured out what we were good at. We did take in a few younger kids, but it really kind of messed with the dynamic that we had with the younger 3 to like throw a 2-year-old in with a 1, 2, 3. And so we ended up mostly fostering teenagers because it was just easier to have kind of two separate, not separate groups of kids, but just like different energies, like I said,
Right.
that we were, it made it easier for us to give them full attention, if they were older. That said, the two younger ones we adopted, we did take as younger kids. So I guess I'm
Okay.
kind of contradicting myself a little bit. Contradictory.
Cool. Yeah. No big deal. I love that. Okay. So let's chat about statistics. This was something that you mentioned in your speech that really, like I
Mhm.
said, drew my eyes. How many kids are in foster care in this area?
That is such an important question, and I wrote it down recently because I was like, "Oh, I know that Townsend's gonna ask me that specific thing, and I wanna have it." Okay, so at this time in Arkansas, there's around 4,500 kids in foster care, and then there's around 1,700 homes, which is actually slightly improved from what it was, back when we were fostering. It hovered around 5,000 most of the time, and that we didn't have as many homes as we do now, but still, obviously not enough,
Yeah.
drastically, short on homes, which then causes our homes to get kind of overloaded and people get
Yeah.
burnt out. And it's a hard job. It's a
That
hard
is
job.
such a hard job. So the kids, they get these kids into the system and they're like, "Hey, foster parents, could you take another one?" And you're like, "No, I have 21 already." Where does that kid go? Let's say the foster homes are full. Where does that
Right.
kid revert to? Like, what's the last option? I want to personally thank you for taking the time to listen to these conversations. It truly means so much. We've changed so many lives for the better, and we want to continue doing so throughout 2023. This project is made possible by sponsors and patrons. So if you'd like to help keep the You're Not Alone project going and hearing these amazing stories, we would love for you to join the family at patreon.com/TownsendTMusic. Just for signing up, you'll get free merch, discounts, and behind the scenes patron only footage. Not only of my music, but of each episode. That's right, so each guest on every episode answers a few more questions that only patrons will be able to watch and listen to. So head on over to patreon.com/TownsendTMusic and let's continue changing lives.
Yeah, and we don't, here in America, we don't have like orphanages, right? That's not
Right.
the thing. These children are not orphans. They have parents. We're trying to work through a case plan, but I mean, they get kind of shuffled. So like, hey, you know what? One foster family says, hey, I can take them for a weekend, even though it's going to overload us, and then they get moved to a different place. There are a handful of emergency shelters that can, have kids for short amount of times, but not extended placements. There's a handful of like older teenage group homes, I believe, but don't quote me on that. It's been a minute since I've been kind of involved in that. But typically, we're just overloading foster homes
Yeah.
that already exist, kind of passing those numbers that maybe they should have. So it's a huge need, and that's one of the reasons I talk about it so much is because the biggest recruitment for foster homes is other foster homes. So like if you are doing life with me and you see me every week and you're like, oh, Kelly's doing this. I think I could do that too. Like I've met the kids. These guys aren't scary. Like this is a doable thing. That's the biggest recruitment is seeing other families do it well. And so just getting it out there and sharing awareness, I think is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I feel like it has a stigma to it. It has like a negative, connotation to it.
Uh-huh.
People think about, I don't know where that came from. Maybe in the past it was kind of corrupt. And I know there are areas where it lacks, or maybe it's from like movies back in the day. I'm not sure, but you think about kids.
Media has a lot to do with it. I mean, I'm a big Criminal Minds fan, like love the show, okay?
Yes.
But admittedly, I can't tell you how many episodes like the main bad guy, spent years in foster care, became a
Yes.
sociopath, this kind of stuff. And yeah, all that does is increase the stigma with these kids because these kids are not in care because of any fault of their own. Period. Full stop. Are they going to maybe have some behaviors associated with trauma? Absolutely. And we've got to kind of prepare people for that. It's not going to be a simple gig, but it is worthwhile, and it's not the kid's fault. So
Yeah,
that's a huge.
okay, I wanna repeat that because I love how you said that, and I want people to realize this isn't through any fault of their own that they're
Yeah,
in foster care,
really.
and so it is so sad that there's such a stigma that people automatically think, "Oh, teenagers, blah, blah, blah." Like I said, there's just such a negative tone to it, and I think it might be like criminal mind things like that, like, even when I think about it initially, I think, it's kind of a hairy situation," when in fact, it's nothing they did wrong, right? And
Teenagers
that's so
in
sad.
general get a bad rep,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And they're not all like they're just growing into adults, and you're
they're
kind of learning who you are and what you want to be.
yeah,
So biological teenagers can be hard too, but they also can be like a freaking joy. Like they are
Yeah.
so much fun. I adore parenting teenagers. I think it's a
Love it.
great time. And we can go into it with an attitude of like, oh, this is a cool opportunity and I don't have to expect you to be that. And and that really does change our interaction with those kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know I was a deer when I was a teenager. Like my mom's listening and rolling her eyes like, yeah, right. Okay. So what does the foster and adoptive process, like what does that actually look like?
Like actually becoming a foster home.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, so the process to train it typically is taking, 4 to 6 to 8 months, kind of depends on kind of how fast your paperwork rolls along. You're going to do like a background check. There's going to be a few things you may need to adjust with your home, like got to have a fire extinguisher, you need to have a fireplace cover. If, a couple of little like petty things like that
Sure.
that are not difficult to change that you could do in a weekend if you
Yeah.
had to. We still have up in our home an escape plan, like a house
Nice.
plan with like little arrows, like, hey, if there's a fire, go out
Yeah.
here, just because we thought it was cute. So we kept it up. We've been closed for a few years
Yeah.
now. Um, anyway, so there's about 30 hours of training that you do to go through the process to become a foster home. And then literally one day they're like, hey, your background checks are cleared. We got your house clear. We've done our walkthrough, all this stuff. You're now open. And then that looks like caseworkers calling you, hey, I've got a 5-year-old. Can you take them tomorrow? Or whatever the
Right.
scenario is. And so it happens kind of that fast. And then once it gets going, it doesn't really stop.
Man, what a rewarding position to say, like, okay, cool. Like, I just made a huge difference in this kid's life. The ones that, like I mentioned earlier, my sister's gotten into that process a little bit, and I have been there when someone's knocked on the door and been like, okay, hey, so we have this kid, or another foster family has been like, hey, listen, we're going on vacation. We need you to watch this kid. And it is so cool and so rewarding and seeing this just the cutest children ever who, like you
Yeah,
said to me, I'm like, they're so innocent. I know they're so innocent and they're so loving. And then some of them are really quiet. And so when you see them open up, it's just one of the best feelings ever. Just
well,
really cool.
it's a cool thing. And one of the neatest parts that we really enjoy, because I mean, the whole point of foster care, always to be super clear, is to reunify with their families. Like these are
Right.
not orphans. This is not, like we're shopping kids in any capacity. It's not like that. We're trying to support these families so that hopefully these kids can go back. And so getting to be a support for those families is a really cool and rewarding part of the whole process, and being able to kind of sit in non-judgment there, right? Because they've just had their entire worlds turned completely upside down, and to be able to be a friendly face in that moment and be like, hey, listen, I got you, whatever you need in this process to kind of help. I'm not trying to get your kid. I just want to keep your kid safe while we get you the help that you need. That's the real stuff right there. That's where it's really rewarding.
Absolutely. I love that. And not judgmental. Like everybody has their skeletons, everybody has their issues. And so I think another thing that people are worried about is the whole family dynamic thing, and you are a stepping stone. Like you said, the whole point of the process of fostering is just like giving these kids a safe space while we figure out how to get them back home safely or how to get mom and dad back on track or whatever that may look like.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I feel like there's a lot of stuff. We could talk about this for days, but there's a lot of things that you've got to prepare yourself for to get into this process. So what might some personal work look like if you wanted to step into something like this?
Yeah, I think it's really huge if this is something that's like a desire of yours to go help. First of all, if you have the desire to become a foster parent, then like just do it. You don't
Yeah.
have to wait for somebody to tell you it's okay or for somebody to ask you or whatever. Like if this is something you want to do, there's a huge need. Just step up and figure it out, right? The resources are there.
Sure.
But I do want to encourage people to not go into it just completely naively, right? Like there are resources. So like talk to adults who've grown up in the foster care system, talk to adults who've been adopted. Be willing to kind of do some of that work and kind of challenge some of your own preconceived ideas. I can't tell you how many times we would take in a kid and then we would be out and about, our friends or whoever would be like, oh, you're so lucky to be with the Krauts. Like, no, they're not lucky. Like their lives just got turned upside down and they got thrown in this house with these strangers and all these little boys. Like that's like the least lucky thing in the world. So like just becoming aware of some of these things that we say when we mean them to be kind and helpful, when in reality, when you talk about a kid who's been through the trauma of being removed from their parents, that's not a cool thing to say, right? And so just being able to be willing to learn, oh, you know what, I meant well by that, but I can see how it's hurtful, so I'm going to adjust and not say that again. So that kind of stuff is what I mean when I'm talking about like doing your own personal work, maybe not assuming that like, oh, well, they've ended up in a quote unquote better place, so this is a win. Well, you know what, that's kind of you're making some big assumptions there, right? And really takes away from the fact that all adoption stories start with a huge loss, period, every single time. Certainly we have adult adoptees who are, happy with their families and are okay with how everything turned out, and, maybe don't associate a lot of trauma with it. But certainly we have scenarios where it's something that they carry with them their whole lives, and just being willing to learn about that and not make too many assumptions.
Yeah. I love that. So this isn't something we discussed before, but let's say I see you out and you've got some new foster children. What is a good way to approach that? Do you just introduce yourself and just be like, man, welcome? Or, I mean, how do you not say those awkward things that we all say?
Right. And we had a couple of little phrases that we used with our house, but we would also just ask the kids specifically, like, hey, how do you want me to introduce you? Like if we kind of go out, and people are kind of like wondering who you are. And I had some kids that were like, just say I'm your foster kid, you weirdo. Like, why are you asking me this? But then some were just like, just say I'm your kid or whatever. So a lot of times I'd be like, hey, here's the crew I've got with me today.
Yeah.
Just be kind of dorky about it, or I don't know, stuff like that. But the kids, they'll open up when they feel safe, right? When they feel comfortable, they'll share their stories when
Yeah.
and they're their stories to tell. So I tried really hard to be, just as nonchalant about it and as inclusive as possible. And it's natural and it's human nature to be like, well, who are you and why are you here?
Yeah.
But the
So
reality is,
tell me about your story.
it's none of your business. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's a tough pill to swallow as adults, because we want to know what's going on. But sometimes it doesn't make sense to know that information. So being willing to move along without that.
Yeah, I love that so much. And that's something, again, that I just didn't think about. And I feel like my listeners can say the same thing. You just get a kid, you treat them the best you can, you give them a safe space in the moment, but you don't have to question them and make them feel like they have to tell you their whole story. That's such a great point. I love that.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So why should someone listening, why should they get involved? What are some of the pros?
Yeah. Well, when I go back to like the core reason that we did it, it was that there was a need that needed to be met, and we had the means and ability and energy to meet that need, for at least for a few kids, not for the whole thing, obviously. But we had the desire to do it, and we had the skills and what we needed to literally do it. And so the reality is there's still a whole lot of kids that need a place to go, and especially for these older kids. So when I say, hey, we've got 4,500 kids in the foster care system, we're going to have a spectrum of ages, and about half of them are going to end up on this higher end. And most people who sign up to foster are a lot more comfortable fostering younger kids. And I love to be an advocate for those older kids, because they know they're being looked over. They know that people do not want to take them in. They're not ignorant of that fact. But I feel like I say the reality is over it. Like, I think it's like a fifth time I've said it. That's so obnoxious. But the reality is,
What?
that you know what, teenagers, you know what they do? They sleep all night long. You know what toddlers need? Diaper changes, like all the dadgum time. There are a lot of reasons that like older kids can be a lot easier to foster. And so I like talking about like, hey, listen, teenagers can talk to you about what they're feeling and what's hard for them, whereas a baby is gonna scream at you and you're just going to be like guessing. So there's a bunch of reasons to take in these older kids, and they're just children who are a little bit bigger than they were a few years ago. They're all just kids, right? So we've got no reason to be scared of them. They just need the same things that they needed a few years ago, just maybe in larger quantities.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
somebody's got to be out there fighting for those older kids, because people are intimidated by them, and they're children.
Yeah. I think you make a good point. Like when I was a teenager, I think I was awake like 5 hours a day. Like you sleep all night, you sleep until 2 in the afternoon, you wake up, you eat, you watch TV, and you go back to bed. You grunt a couple times in between, like, yeah, yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, that nothing could be easier. No,
Right.
I'm totally kidding. I love that. Yeah, I love that you're pointing that out, because I do feel like they get overlooked. They do get the bad reputation, just like you said, all teenagers do, especially one that isn't biologically yours. So love
Right.
that you pointed that out. Kelly, let me ask you, Did you have a conversation with your kids before you started fostering? Because they were
Yeah.
so young. How do you approach that?
Yeah, they were young. When we started, they were 5, 3, and 1.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those were babies. And so it was really just a 5-year-old that we were talking with. And we were just like, hey, you know what? We're going to do this thing called fostering, and we're going to have some kids come stay with us for a little while or maybe a long time.
Yeah.
And that was actually the whole conversation.
Yeah.
And as kids came and went, every now and then there would be some more questions like, hey, why are they here? And like on an age appropriate scale, we would occasionally start to have some of those conversations. So like, hey, you know what? Addiction is a really hard thing. And this is something that this family is dealing with, and they are getting the help that they need so that then these kids can safely go back, that kind of thing. But always, gauging maturity, age appropriateness. But I tell you what, 99% of the time, hey, they're going to stay here for a little while or a long time. And that was like enough information for them. Kids are chill. They're super resilient. And part of, I think because we started with our kids so young, it just became the culture of our house. It was normal for kids to come and go and not just stick around for a super long time. So they never really questioned it. It was just sort of what we did.
Yeah.
So
That's so
it was,
cool.
I think people overcomplicate that. Like their kids
Yeah.
are just not going to be able to deal. And certainly some personalities are going to jive better with that kind of like inconsistency. But we kept a pretty tight schedule when it was, I think they knew what to expect, and they did really well with it.
Yeah, I love that. Now your kids have grown up quite a bit. They're older, still
Yeah.
that they're older teenagers, right? Is what I think
Yeah.
some
So
of a
that 5,
couple.
3, and 1-year-old I'm talking about now, they're 18, 16, 14.
I thought they were older. Yeah, they're real tall and lanky now. I
They're
see
very
these pictures
large
pop up.
children.
I love it. I love it. Now, do you feel like since they grew up, have they mentioned anything about maybe they want to hop into fostering when they're older?
You know what? Hilariously, most of them are like, dude, I'm not having kids because we've got
Yeah.
still so many kids in our house. It's like it's like a lot of energy, right? So my kids now are 18, 16, 14, 13, 10, and 8. And so we've still got some kind of little kids up in there. It's a lot of energy. I don't know. We'll see kind of how it pans out. But if you were to ask each of them about the fostering process, like what they thought, I think they would tell you good things. Like we
Yeah.
we learned a lot in this process. We got our brothers through this process. We still keep in contact with so and so, and we know her kids, and that kind of thing. So they would. I feel like it's been a pretty positive experience for.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love it so much. I love it. And get out there and advocate as well, just from the learning process that they've
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah.
Now, something we didn't address earlier as well, when you're fostering, you're just a safe place while, the parents are getting their life together or figuring it out, getting the help that they need. Are foster families involved in that process? Or does the system take the children back? Like, do the people that are fostering ever have contact with the parents? How does that work?
Yeah. So like when you're fostering, the biological parents or whoever had the custody of the children are going to be working some kind of a case plan that they're working, and visitation is the biggest part of that. And so it's going to be like at least once a week for an hour, you're going to be doing visits. And DHS does not have the manpower to be coming and picking up that kid and doing all that for you. So most of the time that's the foster family who is driving the kid to the visit. And so there's always some kind of interaction with the bio parents, and depending on how they feel about it, you can be as involved as they'll allow you to be, right? So we certainly had families that we worked with where we would meet them at a park and kind of do our own thing and get to know them. And sometimes they need to be supervised by a DHS worker. It all kind of depends. But in our experience, there was a lot of interaction with.
Interesting.
Sometimes sometimes they have phone call visits as
Yeah.
well. So, that would be using probably one of our devices and talking with the kids, that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
it's a decent amount of interaction. That can be intimidating to people on the front side. But again, these are just humans
Yeah.
who have been put in a situation where their very worst day is
Yeah.
on display. Right. And they are just needing someone to help walk along with them so that they can get their family back together. So to get to be there in a space of non-judgment and be a support, I think is just that part is really rewarding. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. How cool. Very neat. Yeah, I didn't realize that as well. The stories I have heard have actually been like one day the foster parents pick them up from daycare. The next day, the mother comes to daycare and picks them up, or vice versa. So there's really no face-to-face meeting. However, they both
Okay.
take care of the kid. So that's cool. I like that aspect as well. I wasn't sure how that worked all the way around.
It's all going to depend.
Yeah.
Every case is unique, right? But we had several cases that when they went back home, stayed in touch with the family for a while,
That's
or we
so
get together,
cool.
get the kids back together because they've now, they've been living with this kid for 3 months and now don't see
Yeah.
them at all. So get them together every now and
I
then for that
love
kind of
that.
activity.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much. Okay. So, how can someone listening, let's say they're listening to this and they're like, okay, that sounds really cool. I want to look more into it. How can they get more involved in the fostering?
Yeah, so the way that it's set up right now, there's a couple of there's several different nonprofits across the state that help train, and all of them are licensed by DHS. I hope I'm not misquoting some of this, but they've got a kind of a system right now where if you go to everychildarkansas.org, I believe, could be .com, but probably .org. You can fill in all your info, and they're going to kind of funnel you into who makes the most sense to do that training for you. So, like the Call is a big one that trains. It's a faith-based organization. There's several across the state that do this kind of training and then funnel you into DHS and all get the same kind of licensure. So that's kind of a cool way that lines up with your community. What kind of resources are there? What other families are there that can be kind of support? So it's a neat
Love that.
system. So Child Arkansas, look that up and get a little bit more information.
Absolutely. In reality.
In
Okay.
reality,
It
that's how
is
you do it.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Kelly, if you had one thing that people could take away from fostering, like from this episode, if there was one thing that stuck with people, what would it be?
Not everything is as complicated as it looks. Like it can just be as simple as like, hey, we're going to open up our home and try to do our best to help. And like, we're going to have to do work and stuff, obviously, to be able to create an atmosphere that's going to be healing for this kid. But there's the thing that all foster parents hear once you've opened up and you take in a few kids, that someone's going to be like, oh, you're such a saint for doing this. And foster families, like, yeah, they're cool people, right? But they're not any better than you. Okay. They're just people who saw a need and stepped up to be a part of it. And so sometimes it is just as simple as that. I saw a need and I stepped up to do what I could do.
I love that so much. Well, Kelly, I think you're pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. I do think
I
you're cool.
appreciate it.
On behalf of myself and my listeners, I want to take the time out to thank you so much for all that you do. Like I said, I saw you speak that one time. I was like, must be friends. I just think what you're doing is amazing. I know you hear it all the time, but I hope you truly realize the difference that you make in all those children's lives, the difference you make in Arkansas. I'm so excited that we have you to be part of the state and to help us out. So thank you so, so much.
Absolutely. It was an honor. Thanks for having me.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Okay, listeners, you know how this goes. Kelly and I are going to keep chatting. You can find the rest of the questions on my Patreon at patreon.com/TownsendTMusic. That is how we keep this project going. If you're done listening, we will catch you actually in the next season. This is going to be the last episode for 2023. It has been such an amazing season. It's been so great. The guests have just been so, so wonderful. So we will catch you next season.
If you'd like to hear the rest of this interview, visit patreon.com/TownsendTMusic. And don't forget, you can also watch the interviews on our YouTube channel at Townsend Ep089-Fostering YouTube.
Let's be honest. I think we could all use somebody to talk to every now and then. Healing Path Counseling in Conway, Arkansas is 100% my go-to when it comes to therapy. Wendy Blackwood has more credentials than letters in the alphabet. She's won awards for her outstanding services and has a whole page of board memberships. Basically, she knows what she's doing. She works hard to help equip you with the tools needed to live your best life. She even offers a variety of services, including, but not limited to, cognitive behavioral therapy, technology-assisted counseling, relationship counseling, and EMDR. Trust me, I know therapy can be intimidating at first, but let me assure you, Wendy does her best to make you comfortable and find the best solutions and plans for you. Trust me, don't wait to make the call. Give Wendy Blackwood Healing Path Counseling a call today. Get started on the best version of you. Okay guys, if you're in the market to buy or sell, I have the perfect company for you. Clark & Co. Realty is located in the Benton, Bryant, Arkansas area, but they're able to serve you no matter where you're located in the state. They've streamlined the process of buying or selling a home to make it so much easier. They have a team of industry experts that make sure you have access from anything you can think of. I'm talking from local home inspectors to painters to gardeners and so much more, just to provide you with the best service possible. They're dedicated to providing the most up-to-date market data in the area. And I think the coolest part is if you go on their website, you can use their easy-to-use fast property search. You can even create a custom market report to see what's active, under contract, and sold in your neighborhood. Their team is made up of caring, knowledgeable professionals that work around the clock to help you with the process of buying and selling your home. So again, if you're in the market to buy or sell, Clark & Co. Realty is definitely the company for you. Tell them Townsend sent you. Selena with Impact Coaching and Consulting is a certified life coach who helps women find harmony with their faith, family, and career. She offers a virtual goals workshop, mastermind group, and a one-on-one private coaching where she helps you identify your deepest purpose, develop a roadmap to reach tangible goals, and encourage you to overcome any obstacles along the way. Selena's worked with hundreds of business professionals throughout the United States, including small business owners, direct sales associates, chiropractors, financial advisors, real estate agents, doctors, professors, teachers, and many more. You can follow her at coach_Selena on Instagram and Impact Life Coaching on Facebook. You'll love the encouragement and the practical tips for finding harmony in your unique life.